Welcome, folks, to another episode of The Wormhole. And I'm so excited with our guest today, and I can't wait to introduce her and to have a wonderful chat with her. And we have with us today Professor Judith Gobin. How are you, Judy?
Fine, thank you. Thanks for having me on the program.
So nice to have you here. So who is Judy Gobin? Certainly a person that has done wonders for science in the Caribbean region. So Judith Gobin is a professor at the University of the West Indies and is an internationally recognized marine scientist with a career spanning more than 40 years. She has made significant contributions to the knowledge of marine biodiversity in Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean, with numerous publications on a number of new marine scientific records and new marine species numbering almost 300. As a foremost benthic ecologist, her research began with her work in soft coastal marine sediments, followed by rocky shores, and more recently, deep sea ecosystems. As a Caribbean marine scientist, she has achieved a number of firsts. Foremost is her appointment as the first female professor in the life sciences at the St. Augustine campus at UWI. It's such a pride for us and for me being her colleague. In 2018, she launched a book and 5-part DVD series, Deep Sea Wonders, featuring footage, the first reveal of TNT's deep sea communities from an expedition by the exploration vessel EV Nautilus, on which she was the first TNT marine scientist on board. She's also a CARICOM advisor on marine genetic resources and participated for 8 years in what has now become a reality, the Biodiversity Beyond National Jurisdiction Treaty. So you can see the impact she has had on science in the Caribbean region. For her extensive contribution to marine sciences, in March 2023, she was honored by a group of scientists who named a deep sea tube worm after her. Lamelli, she'll correct me if I don't get it right. Or maybe I should have you say it, Judy. You go with it.
Lamellibrachia Judy Gobini.
Lamellibrachia Judy Gobini. That is so wonderful. And more recently, she was appointed as the president of the International Association of Biological Oceanography. So folks, what an honor it is for me to have with us to chat with Judy in this episode. So Judy, I like to get started with always, a little bit back in time kind of things. So did you always want to be a scientist?
Actually, no. I always wanted to be a teacher. And when I first got into high school, every afternoon when I got home, I would be teaching like a bunch of invisible students. But when I thought about it, it was actually science I was teaching. So I think it was the interest of science that was sparked there. But later on, at UWI, when I came on to do a first degree in biology, in those days it was zoology, I thought maybe medicine, maybe do a first degree and then go on to medicine. And then I really got immersed in the environmental science and the marine aspects of biology and zoology to a large extent. And I was one of only 6, or maybe it was 5 students in the first environmental science class at this university in the faculty. And it was really very exciting. And really that's where the sort of interest in science really was cultivated. And I felt I really wanted to really stay in this area of environmental science. But just to say that while I was here, in my second year, I was having a conversation with a third-year student, and she was describing this very exciting internship that was available at Institute of Marine Affairs. And the way she described it, it was, well, you get paid, but it's basically going out on a boat all day, and you could wear anything you want. You could be in a swimsuit all day. And I thought, what a wonderful internship. So of course I applied and I got it. and the rest is history.
Oh, what a wonderful story. Yes, why not to be on a boat in a batsuit and I'm working. That is so nice to hear. There are a lot of students that I will come across when I do go into schools myself. And so many of them, Judy, want to do marine biology. So it's so important for them to hear from you. So would you say there were like defining moments in your life that brought you to where you are today in your career?
Yeah, absolutely. So it started, as I mentioned, at the IMA, Institute of Marine Affairs. And so that was when I was between second and third year. Then, of course, I applied for a job there. So my career has literally been at IMA and followed by the university. Then I came to the university. The institute was sort of started in 1975. So by the time I got there 9 years later, we were still doing a lot of very good baseline information for Trinidad. So those field trips, going out in the swimsuit on a boat and so on, we were actually collecting really key data that would form the basis of a lot of the studies that we're doing today. And really where it assisted in sort of guiding me in the direction in which I came. So you did introduce me as a benthic ecologist, which is what I started off with. And that really is looking at marine organisms in bottom sediments that are the bottom of the ocean. So there's a lot of taxonomy, a lot of microscope work. And there was this young colleague who was doing polychaete or marine worm taxonomy, because marine worms make up almost 90% of what's in those marine sediments. And then the guy, his name was Jerry S. Guy, he was leaving the IMA. And I was like, okay, I'll do this. I'll get involved. I'll immerse myself in polychaete taxonomy of marine worms. And of course, it's microscopic, it's tiny organisms. And I really started with worms, marine worms. And that's why it was quite funny years later that the worm has come full circle.
Yeah, actually, that was exactly the remark I was going to make, that at that time in your life, if you could have looked into a crystal ball and realized that one day you will have one of these amazing creatures named after you. So let's talk about, I find it easier to simply say Judy Gobin.
Yeah,
right?
sure.
So let's talk a little bit about Judy Gobin.
The worm is very interesting because in the deep sea environment, we've always known it's very cold. Well, in some areas it's hot as well, where you have hydrothermal vents, but it's there's not a lot happening there as we learned, or as we always did learn. But of course, we've changed that. We've had to change that over the course of time. These worms are found at cold seeps that are present between Trinidad and Tobago and Barbados. So we have our very own cold seeps in Trinidad and Tobago, which we uncovered with the amazing videography we got on the EV Nautilus in 2013 and 14, when the research vessel came to Trinidad and Tobago. So a lot of new species were collected, but of course it takes years to have a look, identify these species. Now, what was interesting about these tube worms, they could grow to 1 meter, 2 meters. Now wow. they're growing at 4,000 meters depth,
Wow.
In the absence of light. They also are, they're tube worms. They do not have a gut or a mouth. Instead, they host bacteria that provide them with food source. So for all the budding scientists out there, this really is the height of chemosynthesis, because at cold seeps, what you have is fluid coming out of the Earth's core, and that's either hydrogen sulfide or methane. And that's actually the food source for organisms like these. So it's an interesting worm. It's very pretty, if I might say so myself, as you can see from the pictures, and they are keystone species as well. So they're very important, and I was absolutely honored that it was named after me.
Yeah, I must say congratulations. What a legacy. And it also recognizes, Judy, the importance of your contribution to the region in the area of marine biology.
Sort of alluded to in my earlier comments, we are rewriting some of the textbooks or some of the content of textbooks, because in the old days, certainly when I was taught, about coral reef, is that corals need warm water, they need light, so you don't find coral reefs below a certain depth or corals. But guess what? We found corals in the deep sea. One of the key things that has happened in marine science really was the discovery of hydrothermal vents, and that's 1977. And those key sort of incidents, that one, and then the discovery of coal seeps, which was a couple of years later, around 1980 or 82, we are finding new organisms. We are finding corals, we are finding sponges, we are finding tube worms like Lamellibrachia judith-gobini. So it's just amazing to be living marine science and living part of the history and the knowledge of science, and for Trinidad and Tobago, the Caribbean, and of course globally.
That's fantastic. And I think us in the islands in the Caribbean, what could be more rich than marine science surrounded by all this water? It's also very interesting. I mean, even from my introduction of you, there have been so many high points in your career, but I want to ask you of what was of really special importance to you.
So one of the sort of really exciting, proud sort of moments was being invited on board the EV Nautilus, which was in 2013 and 2014, by the renowned Professor Robert Ballard. Now, Professor Robert Ballard is a well-known globally as a marine archaeologist, but he's also a deep sea biologist from all his travels and so on. He is best known for having located the wreck of the Titanic. He then invested as a marine archaeologist in this vessel, the EV Nautilus. It's an exploration vessel as opposed to a research vessel, RV. And what he does with an amazing group of people. And what's really wonderful is they keep shifting the groups. He has his key sort of scientists and researchers, and then they keep inviting scientists and young scientists to come on board the ship when they're in your territory. It was the first time that we were invited because admittedly, they were coming to Grenada, where we have the only active submarine volcano, Kikamjeni, in our waters. So that was the volcanologists on the team were very excited about, and that was why Grenada was on the list. So they were coming there, I was invited, and then on board, I kept pushing the senior scientist and the principal investigator, but let's come to Trinidad, Trinidad and Tobago. I suspect we have a lot of things. I kind of feel we have coal seeps because there was some reference of coal seeps and in previous literature, but there was really no videography and no proper documentation that we could share and that we could talk about. And it took me a year. It took a year, a lot of convincing. I had to beg, and the minister at the time was Minister Ram Narayan, who was in charge of energy and energy industries. And at the 11th hour, we're on board the ship. I'm on the phone and I say, please, can you just allow us in? This is groundbreaking. And he said yes. Well, we came to the East Coast, Trinidad and Tobago, spent 48 hours just doing shifts and shifts and shifts of videography. And we have the most amazing reveal of Trinidad and Tobago's biodiversity just from those 48 hours. And there's just so much more to discover. So this is our backyard. This is our territory. This is our deep sea diversity.
Absolutely inspiring. The DVD series that you did comes out of that experience?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So
okay.
yeah, we was very fortunate. I thought this has to be documented, and we actually obviously haven't gone through all of the footage. So in fact, I'm pleased to say that we want to continue, we want to do the work. So my young colleague, Dr. Diva Aman, and myself, we advertised for 2 MPhil students because we need our students to get involved. We need Caribbean people to get involved in looking at and to expand the field of knowledge in deep sea biology, because at the moment in the Caribbean, because there's not many of us, and for obvious reasons, it's quite expensive to do deep sea biology.
Indeed. So I have to ask you, well, I imagine very specialized equipment is probably sent down to do the videography, but are you a deep sea diver? Do you have to learn to dive?
Right. So in my marine science career, and having been based at the IME, we did a lot of snorkeling as well as diving with scuba gear. But for everyone, it should be aware that deep sea diving is not an option, because anything over that sort of depth, the extremely high pressures, as you know, it's extremely cold, and it physically, bodies can't do it. As a little sort of side story here, what is very interesting is William Beebe, that name, William Beebe, was someone, a researcher scientist who went down in a bathysphere. So in those old days, and we're talking 50 plus years ago, people were creating the technique to be able to immerse themselves to go to this depth, because you can't physically do it even with scuba gear. It's just pressures and so on are too high. Now, the bathysphere that William Beebe went down into, I think it was almost 700 or 1,000 feet they might have gotten to for a limited period of time, and then they came up. But the story is interesting because, of course, William Beebe is actually buried in Trinidad and Tobago at the Bucarapo Cemetery, because he had a very good relationship with the Acerite Nature Center, of which I'm chair of the board, as an aside. But the research station that we call SIMLA, and most people in Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean are going to be aware of, is the research station was really named after William Beebe, because he had been spending a lot of time in Simla, which is in India.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. You're full of so many wonderful nuggets of knowledge that I think is so important for us to be aware of. I can see your face just lighting up, and I can see you're so motivated by all this research that you are engaged in and making things happen. But what truly keeps you going and motivated, Judy? I mean, where sometimes, it all gets to be too much. How do you do it?
Yeah, it's I guess it has always been a balancing act, because I am a wife. I'm a mother of 2 grown sons. They've grown up really to be quite decent young men, having with me not having been there, because of course I've always been a professional working woman. But so keeping it together took a lot of effort from my husband and, family members. So, I'm saying this to say to a lot of our young women scientists out there, you can do it. You just have to really work hard at balancing it. Don't miss out on the joys of your young babies and young children, but work with your partner, work with your family to assist, and everyone's contribution is so important. So really, why I've been successful, it's because of my husband, my immediate family, my sisters, everyone chipping in. But the motivation has always been, okay, so that once the balance is there, I really wanted to make a difference, and I still want to make a difference. There were so many gaps. 20, 40 years ago, we did not know much about even our coral reefs, about our, benthic sediments, our sponges, our fisheries. So the motivation has always been to make a difference and to keep adding to the knowledge that we already have.
Well, as an outsider to your field, I can tell you you've certainly made a difference, as I have followed along with your career, getting excited myself at some of the discoveries you have been making. So there are a couple of different topics I want to touch on. And as a matter of fact, you got it started already. And that was about, as a woman in science, did you find that you experienced challenges, or were there, like, you found opportunities? I mean, there's an entire area which is so important about women in science. Historically, it's always been difficult. How were your experiences regarding this?
Yeah, I think we have come a long way, and I think that's very positive because I mean, with communication, access to internet and so on, and globally, women are making such a difference. And so I think it's only fair to say that it's also been happening in Trinidad and in the Caribbean. Women have been, breaking sort of records and, doing groundbreaking work, like yourself, of course. And of course, myself and a lot of other colleagues, even if we just think about here at the university. And yes, there will always be battles. There will always be, issues. But I do think that we are approaching that point where I'm going to be brave and say, I don't see it as being sort of a gender issue anymore in the sciences, because we have carved our niches and we're untouchable. Having said that, I am very pleased to say that most of my mentors and supporters have been historically have been women. And I have some, colleagues down as the key sort of men who have guided me with some of the work that I have done and so on. And of course, in that respect, I remember the late Professor Kenny, who was a living naturalist. And from being a student here at the university, I always loved, and what I learned from him was, he always called everything whether we were in the forest or on the seashore, whatever, he always called everything by its scientific name. So
wow.
that he never said earthworm. He would say lumbernaris and tabibua for the poetry and so on. And it just stuck with you. So it was so, and I really always wanted to be like that. I thought, how cool is that? And it really just, he influenced me a lot. And of course, my late colleague, Professor Dave Chavey, who's globally known as the mosquito man. What I learned from Dave was very specific, that, you can multitask with it, how to get involved with different projects at the same time. And for that, I'm really grateful. And then, as I mentioned, the supporters and the sort of women who've given me a lot of motivation have actually been women, as I said. And key to a couple of them, Professor Patricia Miloslavich, a South America colleague from the Simon Bolivar University. And when I met her, it was amazing because she was pretty much in a university setting like ours. But in those days, things were very difficult for them in Venezuela. But they were making strides, and she was just very gung-ho. And she practically included me in the South American research group of coastal ecosystems. And it was very interesting because I had always thought up to then that that where we are located geographically, we're close to Miami. So as part of my career development, I had always been going to the benthic ecology meetings in the US. And then she started to pull me into the South American ones. And that was where we belong. So it simply because of geographically and, geologically, we are really more South American. And she's just amazing. And then I also had the opportunity to meet Dr. Cindy Vandover and Professors Cindy Vandover and Lisa Levin, They are like the top. If you Google deep sea biologists global of the world, those two names are going to come up pretty much at the top. And I actually met them. I worked with Cindy Vandover and Lisa Levin. So I feel accomplished. And these women have only had wonderful advice for me, and they have continued to support me. And, that has really been very, very key, because I'm doing exactly, I do know I'm doing exactly the same thing for younger colleagues and young women in science. I continue to push them and to continue to look for opportunities for them. And I'm not forgetting now, those women are sort of contemporaries. But then I'm also always motivated by some younger colleagues like Diva Amon and Ladina Kanhai in this department, because I kind of look at them as almost kind of mini-me's. They're so enthusiastic. They're great on their own already.
It's wonderful. I love when you said that we are untouchable.
Yeah.
But yes, the situation I think in the Caribbean for women in science is actually, we are not so much in a bad place, but we can still continue to do even better. And all of that which you highlighted, the role of the people that we engage with, how they inspire us, how they change our trajectory sometimes, by things. Yeah, so it's so important. And exactly what you said, especially the young women and men in academia coming up, our roles with them. So that's just so wonderful. Oh, I can just go on talking to you for hours, but there are a couple other things I want to pick your brain for. Tell us something about you. One would be hard pressed to guess.
Oh, okay. So between the ages of 21 and maybe 26, I did a number of advertisements, TV commercials for in Trinidad and Tobago. And from what I recall, some of them were for, there was a comfort ad, there was a Carib Light advertisement. Really? So, yes, that's when Carib Light. So unfortunately, that dates me, because I have no doubt a lot of our young colleagues are not going to even know what Carib Light is. And then Carnation and Penta.
This is amazing. So you actually had a different career path you could have gone down.
Yes, and actually it paid very well. I must say that it paid very well in those days.
Yeah, well, Judy, as your colleague, and I've known you for many years, I would have been very hard pressed to guess that. So that is most interesting. So what's your idea of fun when you're not working?
Oh, okay. So my family, our two sons, my husband and myself, we love to travel, and we're also big foodies. We literally, my husband and I, Godfrey Arajo, and I just came back from, well, as you know, I went to the meeting in Malaysia, the research meeting in Malaysia and Thailand, and what a foodie experience. So of course we came back armed with spices. Almost every week we do cook a different dish. We're very
amazing. So you enjoy cooking as well?
Absolutely, absolutely. We love cooking. Yeah.
All right. So you're definitely, testimony to that you can do it all.
Yeah, and it's very scientific, the amounts you put and following the recipes, but that gets thrown out the window by the time you've had the second glass of wine.
And everything tastes just wonderful.
Everything tastes just wonderful. And we also love to travel, of course, and that's related to the foodie sort of experience. So
lovely.
One thing, marine biology, one of the positives about the meetings, they're always in very nice places. So the recent one, Malaysia, we also did Thailand on a visit. We've been to Australia, we've been to Japan, we've been to Valencia, Spain, with these marine science meetings. So I'm just in Argentina. So I'm looking forward to some of those places that we haven't yet been. So I'm hoping there'll be some good marine meeting there. If not, we just go on our own.
Yeah, I think that is one of the positives of academia.
Absolutely.
I do tell my own students that sometimes, that if you enjoy seeing the world, this is the career.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, so related to that, I mean, you have had a wonderfully adventurous and exciting experiences. So is there anything left on your bucket list you'd like to do?
Oh yeah. So the bucket list has a number of places like to visit, to still go to. So that's we didn't get to New Zealand, we got to Australia. So, South Africa, Kenya, the Galapagos is big
Oh,
is really, really next on my list. Haven't gotten theirs yet. So that's that's sort of on the bucket list. The traveling to these, because the world is so big. I mean, there's just so many places.
so we have a couple of signature questions on the wormhole. And as we're going to be wrapping up soon, I'm going to throw those at you. One is, if you could be any animal you wanted to be, what would you choose?
Well, honestly, I would much prefer to be a flower. Is that all right?
That will work. That will work. That's wonderful. It's certainly the most unique answer I've gotten to that.
I didn't mind being an orchid.
Oh, that's beautiful.
It's interesting. It's beautiful, different colors. It's very vibrant, not too fragile, a flower, and very solid. It's a very sort of solid flower. So that's what I would like to be. Sorry,
Judy, I believe you just described yourself. So I can see why you are attracted to the idea of that. That's amazing. All right. So last question. What would be your message to the world?
Yeah, that's a really good one. And I really want the world to be more caring. And that means more caring for humanity, more caring for the environment. And really, my main message related to this is caring for the ocean. The ocean is really, the ocean and the deep sea, it's the last frontier for our sustained existence, meaning that the resources that we extract from the marine and sort of deep sea areas, we don't want to impact negatively on them. We already are. Everyone knows about marine pollution. Everyone knows all the different activities and so on that contribute to marine pollution and destruction and deterioration of the marine environment. But the deep sea is where most of my research in the last number of years has been focused, and that is now being threatened by deep sea mining. That's on the agenda for a lot of developed countries coming to mine the deep sea areas across the globe for heavy metals, a lot of those metals that we use in, computers and phones and all of these various, it's those, what I call the new use of metals. And it's really going to be basically raping the deep sea areas. We're talking 4,000 meters, as we mentioned before. We saw some of the lovely biodiversity that exists there. We're going to be ripping all of that up if we allow deep sea mining to take place. So my serious message for this conversation is, let us stop the move to deep sea mining. There's already some we've made some strides, and that's the conversation that we had at the BB&J meetings and with the CARICOM group and so on. We may find that we wake up one morning and somebody's in our deep sea, in our backyard, ripping up the sediments. And if we thought oil pollution was bad, this is much worse. This means not just death to organisms and fauna that we have not even yet described, but it means remember that huge connectivity of oceans. What happens here absolutely impacts elsewhere. So please, let's all, I want all young people to join with us, the deep sea scientists who are calling for no to deep sea mining.
Wow, Judy. So we end on a very sobering note, a very important message. You started with simply the word caring. So caring not just for our fellow people around us, but planet Earth. And that
Absolutely.
is such an important message for our own sustainability and of those of future generations. Like I said, I can just keep on talking to you, but this does bring us to the end of our interview today. And I want to thank you so much, Judy, for taking the time to come out and share your expertise and knowledge and your vibrant personality. Very, very inspiring. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sharon, for this wonderful opportunity. Absolutely enjoyed it.
All right, folks. So we are here closing off from none other than Studio 42, where we seek to find the answers to life, the universe, and everything. So it's a wrap. Bye.